Hello, everyone. We're going to wait a few minutes just to wait for people to funnel in, and then we'll get started with today's webinar. Seeing people funnel in, we're just going to give it another minute or so, and then we'll get started with today's presentation. And feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know where you're from, where you're working, what are you doing. This is a great opportunity to network in the meantime while we're waiting to get started. All right, before we get started, I'll just start off with thanking you all for joining today's webinar, Power BI Beginner Basics Dashboard in an Hour. I am your host, Katie Zwiefel, and I am with Data Coach. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started in today's presentation. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please use the Q&A module. This way, we're able to make sure we do not miss any questions that may be lost in the shuffle in the chat box. Gavin will be happy to answer any questions throughout the presentation. As for the chat function, just please introduce yourself. We'd love to know your name, where you work, and what position you hold. And feel free to drop your LinkedIn profile in the chat as well. Before we get started, we have a quick message from our sponsor, Data Coach. Data Coach, where most analytics training programs lack depth, Data Coach provides wisdom. Our modern curriculum is unparalleled, comprising video lessons, hands-on exercises, and a capstone project designed around your company's data. Data Coach also offers a truly premium service, one-on-one coaching. I'd also love to introduce our speaker of today's webinar, Gavin Pedersen. Gavin is experienced in data analytics, business intelligence, and helping teams establish self-service solutions. He has focused his career on developing competencies in the functional aspects of his MS in data science. Gavin began his career on Best Buy's order management BI team and later transitioned into an analytics consulting firm in Washington, D.C. Throughout his experience, he has helped lead the teams in their analytics journeys by developing solutions in Power BI and Alteryx. As a consultant, Gavin specializes in self-service, enablement through dashboard and workflow development through the Power Platform. I'm now going to turn it over to Gavin. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
All right. Thanks, Katie. Appreciate that intro. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Happy New Year. I'm going to share my screen here. I hope you guys all had an excellent holiday season filled with spending time with family and friends in the safest way available to us. Again, my name is Gavin. I am a consultant for Tessellation, which is a consultancy here in the Twin Cities. My focus is, again, in data visualization and specifically in Power BI, which is exactly what we are here to talk about. So I'm going to go through just a quick agenda and then we'll hop right in. We are limited on time today. And so with regard to if you guys have questions, I'll do my best to take questions at the end. And if I'm not able to get to it, we'll try and get back to you to answer those. But I do want to make sure that we get through the entire presentation, which I think will probably be recorded and you guys will have access to reference at some other future date. Okay, so agenda. First thing we're going to do is I'm going to give you a quick tour of Power BI Desktop, which is hopefully what you're seeing on the screen in front of you. I'm going to give you a tour of that application, the different views that we have, how we can use it, and the different options that are available for us. From there, I'm going to show you how to configure a data model using the imported data set that we have. And then I will live build a full functioning dashboard for you. From there, I will publish the dashboard onto a shared workspace along with the data set that we created onto that shared workspace, and then show you how to connect to that data set as perhaps one of your users if you were provisioning access to it. So with that said, let's just start again, like a quick tour of Power BI Desktop. So we have three main views in the application. And they're all available if we flip through this sidebar here. So there's 3 different views you can see. And so the first one that we're on is called the report view. And this is where, as Power BI developers, we really spend the bulk of our time. So this is where we build our visualizations and we configure our dashboards. And we can even do a little bit of data formatting here as well. So that is our report view. The next view is the data view. This is obviously a look at the tabular version of the raw data that we have ingested into Power BI. The best use case for this view is really for data validation. So especially if you're like adding calculated columns or measures, and you don't want to necessarily build a visualization or multiple visualizations to be able to validate off of, you can just come here, quickly use it the same way like you would Excel, because you can like filter on columns and sort columns and do all that in this view here. Okay, data view. So the next, third and final view is our data model view. So we tend to think of Power BI as a data visualization tool, and it is primarily. If we're importing data into Power BI, and I'll explain the difference a little bit later on between if we have an import mode versus a live connection to the data. If we're importing our data, we are actually creating a data model and a data set that we can publish and provision access to. And so this data model view is where we get to see the visual representation of the structure of that data model and the schema for that data model. And you can create and alter the relationships between tables here as well. So those are the 3 views within the main Power BI desktop application. There is one more layer that lives behind Power BI, but is accessible using the same application, and it's called Power Query. We're not going to go too much. I'm just going to show you what it is because I want you to be aware that it's accessible there for you. But what Power Query is it's a layer, again, that lives behind Power BI that is used for more robust data transformations. And that's accessible if we just go to transform data here. A lot of you, if you're familiar with Microsoft Excel, probably have a familiarity with Power Pivot. So I like to draw a parallel line between Excel and Power Pivot and Power BI and Power Query. So again, this is where more of your robust data transformations can take place. And there's tons of free resources out there for you to be able to guide you on how maybe you want to accomplish some of that. Okay, so let's start the build. The first step with any dashboard build that we do is to be able to import the data. I've already imported the data and you can see it on the far right here in the fields list. I guess that's one thing that I forgot to mention is on this canvas view here. So this canvas is where we build our visualizations. We have our filters panel here. We'll go over that a little bit later. Our visualizations where we select which visual we want to use and format, and then the fields list with all of the data accessible to us. So I already imported the data just for the sake of time, but if we're already at this view and we don't have any data imported, there's a couple of ways that we can get data in, and they're all accessible using the ribbon up top in this data menu. So there's just some quick buttons here. If you have recent data sources, you can quickly connect to Excel or Power BI Dataset, which again we'll do later. But if you don't see what you have as a data source there, it's likely in this menu here or in the entire menu of options, which will come up as a pop-up. So these are all of the out-of-the-box established data connections that are available to you. So again, that's all of them, but they do sort them for you as well. So if you had Power Platform, there's Power BI Datasets, different file formats as well. Okay, so that's how we import our data. And then I'm going to show you how to build our data model. I guess I'll also explain the data set that we have. here. So this is what's called it's a public data set, and it's published by Tableau. So Power BI's main competitor in the visualization space, but it is a data set of a fake global office supply company that has 3 different tables. And I'll go to the data view to show you here, but the tables are, we have an orders table, which just is our main fact table, which just tracks our global orders. And then there's a people table, which is a very small HR table, which shows us our regional managers, and then a returns table to help us track order returns. So we have those 3 tables in our data source, which is an Excel file for me that I imported. However, I can't currently use data from all of the tables on one visualization with any amount of accuracy, because there isn't relationships that are created yet between those tables. So that's what we have to do in this data model view right now. We have to create those relationships so that we can pull data from one table into another and use create visualizations using multiple tables. And there's a number of different ways that we can do that. So let me take a step back here. Power BI is good at detecting inherent relationships in your data source. So if those relationships are already created, if you're using like an AIS model, for example, if you have relationships that are already created in there, it'll be imported with the data set as well. Full disclosure, in this data set, I deleted them though, just so I could show you how to create them. Yeah, like I said, it's good at detecting inherent relationships. So if you need to create relationships, there's a few different ways that you can do that. The first couple are using this manage relationships button up here. And I can go ahead and go auto detect. And that'll, if for some reason it didn't catch one that's inherent, it may be that it got deleted somehow, or for whatever reason, it wasn't detecting it. So we can try by clicking auto detect here, and it found one relationship. So the relationship that it detected was between orders and people. And if I hover over this connection here, which again is just a visual representation of where the relationship exists, I can see that it found the connection on region. I can expand this out a little bit, and then region on the orders table. And if I want to edit this in any way, I would just double click that connection and I can edit the column that it's on. Although I don't know why you would, because this is the correct field to create that relationship on. But if you, for some reason, needed to adjust it, this is how you would do it. You can also adjust the cardinality, which for us is many to one is the correct cardinality that we want between these 2 tables. Okay, auto detect. The second way that you can do is go back into manage relationships, and I'm going to go new. And then I'm going to select my orders table as the first table, and then order ID. So I'm going to create a relationship between the orders table and the people table, or sorry, the returns table. So I know that the keys for those tables are order ID. Again, if you're doing this, you'll obviously want to know ahead of time what fields you're able to create those relationships on. So for these 2, it's order ID. So with orders table and order ID selected, I'm going to go into, I'm already forgetting, yep, people, and it's detected order ID, but if this was a table that had dozens of fields, it might not get it. So you'd have to select it here. And again, we do want a many-to-one relationship, and we want to make this relationship active. And we go ahead and click close, and you'll see that connection there. So those are the 2 ways that you can do it by managing the relationship with that button up here. There's one other way. I find it's the easiest way, especially if you only have a couple of different or a few different tables that you're working with. And that's just to take the field and drag it on top of the other one. And then that automatically created it that way. And again, you can click into it and see that relationship that you created. So obviously a pretty simple data set, just a few different tables with a couple of connections. But now you're equipped and you know how to set up your relationships among the tables. Before we start building our visualizations, there's one other step we need to take, and we need to reformat some of this data. So the dashboard that we're going to create is a global sales report. Power BI calls what we think of as dashboards as reports. There's something in Power BI that is called a dashboard, but for all intents and purposes, what we're building right now is a dashboard. So global sales report. We have a number of different columns that we can help us track how well the company is doing with regard to sales. So we have our costs, our profits, our discounts, and those are all great. They're in they're in currency formats, and you can tell that because there's a little dollar sign. However, our sales column, which is going to be the main value that we're using for our report, is just in a decimal format. So we need to convert that format into a currency. And there's two ways we can do that. If we go to format and then general, we can select currency. Otherwise, we have the entire list of currencies available to us within Power BI here. We want the US dollar. So we're going to go ahead and click that. And you can see that now also this is a perfect example of how we can use this view to validate that, yes, this is now in the dollar format view that we need. And we're officially ready to get started on building our dashboard. So again, global sales dashboard for our fake office supply company. The first visualization that I am going to build is called a card. It is the easiest visualization. It is the most simple. All it is one value that is aggregated. Just shows a single number. And I want this single number to show us sales. So I'm going to open it up. And so in order to get that on the canvas, I just went to my visualizations panel here and I clicked card. And I'm just resizing because we're going to use the entire canvas to build our dashboard. But all right, so I want sales. So I'm going to go into orders, which is where my sales column is. And I'm going to click on the checkbox there, and it's going to auto-populate for me. So 12.46 million or 64 million. I could have also dragged this into the fields option here as well, but I find it's easier to just click that checkbox. So that's great. We have this card that shows us total sales, but we want to format it a little bit just to add a little bit of flair to our dashboards. That's, I guess, more, I don't want to say entertaining, but it's just better to read for our users, or it gets them to read it more because it's just easier to read than just a simple, black and white card. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the data label, which is the value that's in the card. And I'm going to select font family. I'm going to go through some of this a little bit quickly because it's just showing you sort of the options. I only want one decimal place for this card. I don't want two decimal places. So in the data label value for decimals, I'm just going to do 1 and I rounded it to 12.6. I'm also going to turn off categories, which is sales here. Why am I going to do that? We don't know what that means now because I'm going to add a title and I'm going to have that title say total sales. And then I'm going to bump that up to 16 point font, and I want the same font family as what's in the value. Okay, the last bit of formatting I'm going to do is to just add some color here. So I'm going to change the background of the card to a nice blue because that is the color of our company. And now I want it to be a little bit more readable than just black on blue. So I'm going to go back into title, change the font color to white, and I'm going to change the data label font to white as well. Just reformatting to make sure we can fit everything. Cool. So total sales, there's our card. Next visualization is going to be the exact same card. We're going to just do a different value. So Power BI makes this really easy. I can actually just Control-C and Control-V that card and put it right next door and then format it the way I need it to. So we're going to do profit. So I'm just going to uncheck this box and then I'll drag this one in and just show you. Now we have profit. So the only other formatting that we have to do here, obviously, is switch our title. So I'm just going to switch that to total profits. And to make it just a little bit more exciting, I'm going to choose a different color background. You notice that I went into background. I'm selecting the color. If you have a different color that isn't available just from this quick selection, you can go to more colors here and you can adjust the slider and then select the color randomly, or if you know sort of the shade that you want, do it that way. If you have a red, blue, I always forget if it's red, blue, green or red, green, blue value to plug in here, you can do that. Or if you have a hexadecimal value for a color, you can do that there as well, which I actually do. So I'm going to paste that hexadecimal value into another shade of blue in there. So we have total sales and total profits. Okay, we have one more card to make, and then we can get into some more exciting visualizations. So I want this card to show our profit margin. However, there's just one problem. We don't have profit margin here as a value. So we have to create that value, and we have to create it as a measure. So there's a couple of different ways that I can create measures. The first, and for many people, the easiest way is to just do a quick measure. And this is going to open up a menu of sort of just drag and drop options for us. So if I just have, if I know the mathematical operation, which actually ours is division, and I know the numerator and denominator, I can just go to profits and sales, and then click OK, and it'll create that measure for us. The other way that I can do it is by clicking new measure, and that'll open up a formula bar, and then the same result for just right clicking here and then new measure. And again, that's going to open up the formula bar here, where I will rename this as profit margin percentage. This is very similar to Excel formulas, so it's using a language called DAX, like Power Query. We're not going to get into that because that can be an entire week's worth of webinars for us to just familiarize ourselves with the DAX formula language. So I'll just do this quickly, but the formula, just so you can see how it works, is going to be divide. Power BI is also good at auto-populating, so it already knows I want to do divide, so I'm going to tab over, and then it prompts us to plug in the numerator. So the numerator is going to be the sum of the column of profit, and then it wants us to delimitate the numerator and denominator with a comma, so sum of the column of sales. Close that off and then hit enter, and you'll see over here it'll populate profit margin. So that's been created for us. So that measure is now available to us for our entire dashboard. All right, so again, we're just going to do a quick card. I'm going to name this profit margin. And obviously we need the right field on there. Profit margin percentage. Okay, obviously this is not a percentage, so we need to format that value. So with the measure selected, I can just go and I can click the percentage sign here, 11.6%. I also want this to round to the nearest percent, so I am going to, just on this card, I want it to round to the nearest percentage. If I wanted to force every instance of profit margin to round to the nearest percent, I would select here and just change the number of decimal points here. But if I just want it on one visualization, I have to format that visualization. So going to data labels and 0. So it rounds to 12% for us. Cool. So we have our 3 cards. Actually, sorry, one more. I have to change the color. Just again, so we can just have a little bit of flair on our dashboards, because that's important too. Okay, so the next visualization that we're going to do is going to be sales by country, and we're going to do it as a table. Tables are just what they sound like. It's a tabular version of the data that we have. And so I'll just start building this and explain a little bit more as I do that. But so sales by country. So I selected country, and then I want sales. And then I also want profit margin next to sales, because I think that's pretty useful as well with this context. Okay, so let's format this a little bit just to make it easier to read. I'm going to choose a different style of table. I want minimal. You can see that it just changed a little bit. So before we had none, or default rather, I want a minimal. I want to get rid of that blue line. So that's going to be grid. I'm just going to choose a gray to sort of blend it on in. I also want to format my column headers, country, sales, and margin to be a little bit more readable. So I'm going to bump up the size there to 14, let's say. And then they are all currently aligned to the left, but if for some reason we added something in and it didn't align left, we want to force it to align to the left. I want to format the values as well to be a little more readable because they're kind of small. So we'll bump that up to 12. And then with this table, we actually don't really much care about what the total is. All we want are just the rows of the country, the sales, and the profit margin. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn off the total, and total is a separate formatting option here. So I'm just going to turn it off by clicking that button there. Do a little bit of formatting on some of these fields. So I want to change the color of the country font to another blue. Okay, so tables are helpful because again, it just shows sort of that raw data, but we can also add some additional context to the data that we're looking at by implementing some conditional formatting. So we're going to do that on sales and profit margin. So I'm going to go into conditional formatting here, and I'm going to select sales. And I want to change the background color of this column to be a diverging color scale dependent on how well that country is performing when compared to the other ones. So I'm going to go into background color, and I don't want blue. So I'm going to go into advanced colors here, and I want it to go from red on the minimum end and then green on the higher end. So red here, and this is actually kind of annoying that Microsoft has done this, but they don't have green as an option for default. So I have to go into more colors, and I don't have a value. So I'm just going to go somewhere in the green, and I'm going to select something that I think might look kind of nice. And I'm also going to add a middle value as well, and it's going to auto detect that it's yellow. The other thing I'm going to do is grab that hexadecimal value, actually maybe a little bit darker, because I'm going to reuse it for the other column. And you can see that we have conditional formatting on this column. So if I sort this by sales, we can see the US is by far outperforming the rest of our data set. Okay, so we're gonna do the same on profit margin, except for just to show you the difference on some of these options. I'll just do it on the font color. But again, it's going to be the exact same color scale that we have before. So paste my hexadecimal, and I'm going to add a middle color. And there we go. And again, so this is really helpful too if you have, again, a couple different columns that tell different sides of the story. So for example, if we sort this to the highest performing country by profit margin, 44% is really, really good. However, it's on $156 worth of sales. So nice try, Armenia, but maybe we need to figure out how to boost your sales. And likewise, we can see, who's at the bottom, and, is there anybody who else is at the bottom that has higher profit margin? It just adds a little bit more context to the data for us to easily be able to flag some of those data points. Okay, so just a little bit more formatting. I am going to turn on title. I'm going to do sales by country. And I also want that to be 14-point font is fine. The background color I want as this blue. Font is white. Some of this formatting may seem trivial, but it really does help with readability, and it does help get your users to come back if it's fun and interactive for them to read. So bear with me here if it seems trivial, but we do find that it is important. Okay, so now we have sales by country. I'm going to add one more table in just below. So again, I'm going to copy and paste it. I'm just going to have a different dimension here. So instead of country, I want category. So I'm going to deselect country and I'm going to select category. You can see that it ordered it with category on the far right, but I want that on the far left. So I can just take it from the visualization values here and drag it on the top. And now you see we have category in the same formatting for sales and profit as we do our table just above it. So I just want to switch the title, sales by category. The other thing I want to is because we're only measuring 3 different categories as opposed to the entire countries, all the countries in the data set, I want to force profit margin to be 0 decimals, just like we did up here. So I'm going to go into field formatting and have 0. And you can see it just switched it. So there we go. So now I have sales by category. Something that Power BI allows us to do is to be able to filter visualizations by clicking on pieces of other visualizations. So for example, if I wanted to see all of these numbers here and sales by category for just the United States, I click on United States and you can see some of this may need to be reformatted. I won't do it, but just to fit everything on the card, but everything is now adjusted to what these values are for the US. So the US sold 836,000 in the technology sector. I can control click to get multiple of them. And then to undo it, I just double click one of them. And that unfilters the entire data set. Okay, so we have another visualization that we're going to build, and we want sales by state because we have state values globally as well in this data set. So, and I'm going to use a map for that one. So I'm going to select my map. I'm just going to fit it nice and flush right there. All right, so sale. Oops. Actually, first I want state, starts with an S. State. And you can see that it populates a map for us with all of the states that we have available in our data set. And I want these dots to be representative of the sales for those states. So I'm going to drag in sales into size, and that'll adjust the size of the dots. So for example, if we filter on North America, or the US, sorry, we can see in the US the different states and how well they're doing. We can see that there's a couple of them or a handful of them that are outperforming the others just by looking at the size. So we have Washington, California, Texas. I assume this is New York. Yeah, so we have our map and our sales that is representative of the size of the dot. So I also want to format this the same way that I've been doing. So I want the sales by state title to read the same as our sales by country and category tables. So instead of going through the pain of doing all of that in the formatter here, with one of these selected, I can just go to the format painter and click here, and it'll copy the formatting that was copied for, or that was done for that table. And so we just saved ourselves a little bit of time by doing that. Okay, so the next visualization that we're going to build is a trending graph. This is all really good. Raw numbers are super helpful, and they're good for detecting, snapshots in time. But I want to know how we're performing from a trending perspective historically through today. Our data set actually stops at like 2014, but yeah, so we need trending data nevertheless. So the best visualization from my perspective to accomplish that is just a line chart. So we're going to insert a line chart and we're going to size it to go right here. And we want to make it longer just so that we can really see the trend of sales. So again, we want sales here. And then we want this by order date, which you see is a value here. And I'm actually going to jump back into the data view and show you order date is a single column. And it's in this long date format for us. Another thing that I guess the Power BI is especially good at is detecting hierarchies in your data. You can also create hierarchies, but it's good at detecting them as well, especially with regard to time series data. So I can use order date as a single column anywhere or as a single value anywhere on my dashboard. But if I want to pull out the individual components that make up that field, I have the hierarchy to do that. So I just expand it out and I can use the year, the quarter, the month, or the day on any of the visualizations here. So again, I just want year and month. So I am going to, just want to make sure I didn't filter. Okay. I'm going to select year and I'm going to select month. Let me see if that is tall enough for us to keep all of the, nope, it's not. And my OCD is going to make me even these out. Bear with me here for a second. Okay, so quickly going to grab the format painter just to get the same format that we've been going with. Okay, so one of the other things that I like to do is to eliminate as much noise as possible on dashboards. Extra noise affects readability. And one example of noise is unnecessary redundancies. So there's a redundancy from my perspective on this visualization, and it's this sales axis title here. So I'm going to turn that off because we know that this is representative of sales because it's in the title. So we have sales by year. Okay, we know obviously this is year and then that has to be sales. So I'm going to turn that off. So it's going to do a couple of things for us. And this is just like a best practice and more of a strategy. But I'm going to go into the y-axis. And so you can't just turn the y-axis off, otherwise you'll lose the values. So I actually have to go into the y-axis and then turn the title off. And you can see that it actually gave us a little bit more room on the dashboard too, or on the visual too. I'm going to now select a different color just to get a little bit of variance on there. Okay, so we use year and month for our values that we're tracking sales on. Or the fields that we're tracking sales on. However, we only see year on here. And that's because we used a hierarchy to create this visual. So we can drill through the levels of the hierarchy on this visual to get to that month level. And we can do that to show a few different variations of the data with regard to that hierarchy. So the first one, and they're all available using just these 4 buttons right here. These are something else, but these 4 buttons here. So from my perspective, the most useful with regard to this visual is this forked arrow here. So as it says, it's going to expand the hierarchy, the entire hierarchy down a single level. So there you can see all of the, and it only shows it on the axis because there's only a room for it. A handful of months, but each point is a different month in the year. So again, I did that. I can go back up, clicking that up arrow, but just expanded it down one hierarchy so we can see on the month level how are we doing as opposed to just sort of a straight-ish line. We can see a little plateau there, but so that's expanding down one level of the hierarchy. If we want to quote unquote go to the next level of the hierarchy, which in my opinion, isn't particularly helpful with this visualization, but is extremely helpful in other visualizations. Like if you had product categories, for example, that's very helpful here. Categories and then subcategories being the next level. But I'll show you just so you can see what it looks like, and I'll explain what it's doing. But so it just expanded it down one level. And the reason this isn't helpful for us is because what this is showing is the aggregate of all of the marches in the 4 years here, which again is just not how we would track things unless we truly wanted an average, or sorry, not an average, but a total of the months in our entire data set by those months. But that's available to you as well. Let's say we wanted to know just how 2013 did, and we just want that on the visual here. I'm going to turn that ability on by clicking this drill mode button, and then I'm going to click into 2013. And not only is it going to expand that out, but it's going to filter the rest of the dashboard to 2013. So there you have it. There's our trending. Oh, the other thing that you can see too is sales by year is our title. Let's say I expand it down, and now knows that it's sales by year and month. Okay, there is our, we are cruising. There is our trending chart. We have one more chart that we're going to build, and then we will get onto the next portion. So I want top 5 regional managers by sales chart. So I'm going to insert a bar chart, and that's, you can see another thing that Power BI is good at. It knew where this should go because it's really the only white space that's available for that visual. But okay, so because we created our relationship early on in the model using the people table, I can pull over people from here, a person, and then I can also pull in my sales, and then it'll order it for sales. All right, I'm going to format this the same as all these other ones. Sales by year. Much like the one on the top, I want to turn off the y-axis because this is obviously, these are obviously people because they're names. So I'm going to, and again, I don't want to turn off y-axis because then we'll lose the name, but I'm going to go into the y-axis and turn off the title. I do, however, want to turn off the x-axis. Actually, I do, but you can see this is something that is annoying for Power BI, but it didn't turn off the title for the x-axis. So I actually have to go in and turn off the title and then turn off the x-axis in general. The reason I'm doing that is because I don't really care on a line how well they're doing. I'm just going to add in data labels. And that way we know how well each of these people are doing. All right, I need a title. And as I said, this is top 5 regional managers by sales. Okay, so this is obviously not the top 5 regional managers. These are just all of the regional managers, and it has sorted them by sales. So we need to add a filter to this visualization. And we do that using the filters panel here. There's a few different filters that are available in Power BI. We're only going to use one of them, but I'll briefly describe what they are. So there's filters on all pages. So when you're working in a PIBX, which is the file type for a Power BI workbook, you can create multiple sheets like you can in Excel, and you can create multiple reports or dashboards like this. So I'm actually just going to rename this as sales report. And so if I wanted to create a filter that is across all of those sheets or pages, I would do that using this menu here. If I wanted one just on the page that I'm currently on, I would create it using filters on this page. However, I just want to filter on the visualization that I have selected. So I can do that on any of them, and you can see that it's changing the fields that to the visual that I have selected. So again, top 5 regional managers by sales. I have this bar chart here selected, and I want to filter on person. So with that selected, I am going to expand on the filters on this visual, the person. I can also filter by anything else in my data set as well. So if I wanted to filter for whatever reason, like by region or market, I guess I wouldn't do region, but if I wanted to filter by market, I could drag that here, and market wouldn't show up on the visual, but I could still filter by it. But we just want by person. So I'm going to expand that out, and there's a number of different filter types that we can use. We have basic filtering, which I can just individually select the ones that I want to show up on that visual. I can do advanced filtering, which allows us to do a little bit more sort of like logic-based filtering. But the one that I want for top 5 is top N. If you wanted to do like a bottom 5, for example, it would also be in the top N. You would just show bottom there. So be aware that if you want to show a bottom, whatever, then it is in top N. So we need an N value here. So top 5. And by what value do I want to filter by? Sales. And I'm going to apply that filter there. So we have our top 5 regional managers by sales. So I can show you that it is filtering. However, it is not filtering the way that we want it to filter. So what that just did was it took the top 5 regional managers in the entire data set, and it filtered from those top 5, or of those top 5, which ones are in the US, and then what portion of their total sales are from the US. So Anna has $2.8 million in sales. However, $500,000 of them are in the US. And then Jack isn't in the US at all, or just had a really, really bad year in the US, but likely he's just not in the US. So what we want though is for this visualization to filter to the top 5 US regional managers, or top 5 Australian regional managers. And so we have to edit the interactions that are happening or occurring between these visualizations. And we do that by going to format and then edit interactions. You have to, so this is a little counterintuitive. I can't edit the interactions from other visualizations onto this one with this bar chart selected. I have to do it from each of the origin visualization, or the visualization of origin that I'm filtering to or from. So with sales by country selected, I can see the different interaction types that are available to me to select. I can have none, which literally means that if I click anything on this, that it won't filter at all. It would still filter if I clicked technology, but it won't filter at all. Highlight, that's what we currently have. So it'll keep what's on there. It'll just highlight the portions of the values or the fields for what we're filtering on. Or we can select just filter, which is exactly what we want. Again, I want that to be able to happen no matter which visual I'm filtering from. So I'm going to do that for all of them. And filter and filter. Close that. Okay, so now if we click the United States, it should filter to, and so there's only 4 managers or regional managers in the US. The top 5, if there were 5 managers in that country. You can also see that it'll reorder if it was already on there. So Anna, despite being globally the highest, or the top performing manager, is, what was it, 3rd in the US. Again, we can click multiple if you want to compare, the US and the UK and get their top 5. Then you would do that way. Okay, so those are our visualizations. We want to just add a quick title and a logo before we publish to our users. So I'm going to do that quickly here. Add in a text box. And I'm going to resize it and just add in local sales. Make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to read and just much more worthy of a title. And you guessed it, blue. Okay. Now, I want a logo so people know, what it is they're looking at. Maybe your team has a team logo, or your department has a department logo, or maybe just you want to add an additional piece of flair onto your dashboard. So I'm going to add a logo by inserting an image, and then I have a logo here, and I'm going to just resize it a little bit so that it fits nicely in the corner. Okay, so that's it. There's our dashboard that we just built, and our data set, or our data model that we built alongside of it. Now I want to publish this. So I think there's a couple of ways that you can share reports. You can obviously email it to people. There's security and governance issues with doing that. But if you have a shared workspace that you're publishing these to, you can do that very easily here. So you would just go to the home tab and click publish. And as long as you're logged in and you have a Power BI tenant that is associated with your login and shared workspaces, you would just go to publish, and then it'll save it to as well. A pop-up window, hopefully. Yep. Okay, so these are all of the shared workspaces that I have access to. My workspace isn't shared, but the other three are. So I'm going to publish it to Gavin's workspace. So let's say this is a workspace that I've provided access to my whole team or people outside of my team throughout my enterprise. So I'm going to select that workspace, and it's going to publish it now to Power BI Service, which is the cloud version or the .com version of Power BI. So people can access this report there. So I am going to go to home here. So this is our Power BI instance. If I go into workspaces and then Gavin's workspace, you can see the report and data set that we just created and that was published. It was not here before. So if I just click into it, you can see it's exactly as it was in the desktop version. And we can do all the filtering that we want here. If you're a developer, if you have access to be able to edit, you can do small edits here, mostly formatting, and you can build visualizations, but you can't really do any like data engineering work in here at all. Okay, so again, global sales report in our shared workspace. We've, again, if you email out dashboards, this is a great option for you to be able to house all of your dashboards in a shared repository and provide access to. You'll also notice that we have our report, but there's another item that is in our workspace that was created alongside of it, and that's the data set that we created. And so if your team is building dashboards, you can also build data sets for users. Let's say you want to provide access to users not only to your dashboards but to your data sets, so that they can build their own reports off of the data set that you've already created. You can, as a user, access this data again as long as you have access to this workspace. And so if I open up a separate instance, brand new instance of Power BI, and I now, am I running out of time, Katie?
No, you're good. It looks like if you're
Okay.
showing a workspace, we can't see it right now. You might be showing the wrong screen.
Uh-oh.
Just a comment come in.
Okay. Sorry, guys. Share screen. I thought I did the entire screen. Maybe not though. Sorry. Can you guys see a workspace now?
Yep, we see it. Thank you, Gavin.
Okay. Yep. All right. So I'll just quickly, how am I doing on time, by the way? About
You
6
have
minutes?
about 5, yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'll just quickly describe what I did before. I apologize. So this is our shared workspace where we just published this dashboard to. I can go in here as a user. You can provision access to your users and access your dashboard here. If I go back to my workspace, you'll also see what I was describing, the data set here as well. So I'm going to now open up a new instance of Power BI, and connect to that data set as if I'm like a user that needs to access that data set. Do we see now a new instance of Power BI? Katie?
Mhm.
Okay, cool. All right, so we need to get data the same way that we did before, except for we're not doing it from Excel this time. We're doing a Power BI data set. So that's available here. It is also available in the data set here. I'm going to go through this really quickly because I do want to leave a couple minutes for Q&A. All right, so I just connected to that Power BI data set, and you can see that we have our data set here. There's a couple of things to note. So there's two different kinds of connections that Power BI can handle. There's an import data, which is what we did before, where we imported the entire data set, took it out of its source, brought it into Power BI, and stored it there. Or there's what's called a live connection or direct query. It's effectively, it's the same thing, but depending on what your data source is, it's called one of those two. And that keeps the data in the source, and it just queries it and pulls it in and visualizes it there. But you can't, it doesn't extract the data from the data source at all, which is actually the only option for a Power BI data set. You can't import data from a Power BI data set. You also, you also can't do what's called composite data models in a Power BI data set, which means I can't blend another data set or a source with this data set as well. This is the only source that I can have in this workbook. I also don't have access to the data view. To be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure why they don't even give me access to the tabular view. We can see also that the data model is here and built for us. We do, however, do not have the ability to make any kind of edits. We can just see what the schema looks like. In terms of governance and security, this is really, really helpful because let's say we have a standardized way of calculating certain measures. If I flip back to my other dashboard here and I open up profit margin, which is what we created, I have the ability to edit this. However, in this dashboard, if I go to profit margin, it doesn't give me that ability. I can't edit that. And obviously there's only one way to create a profit margin, but if you have other ways of calculating measures then that you want to standardize throughout your enterprise or your team, this is an amazing way to do it. So now I'm your user, I'm ready to start building. I can just start using my data or your data. Because it's a direct or a live connection, it takes a little bit longer too, because it has to query the data as well. Deep breath, that was a lot. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. I know that was fast. We have a couple minutes for a Q&A.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions, Gavin. So one is, does Power BI have field selectors? So a user could swap country for state or country.
I guess I'm not sure what you mean by the like, are you like, I think what the question is like, can you swap out in real time what the visual is showing? So if you had sales by country, could you just swap it out for state, for example? If that's your question, you can create hierarchies and you can do it that way, and then you can drill through. Otherwise, you can parameterize your data, and that's an entirely another webinar. There's tons of free YouTube videos out there, but that would be a way that you could do it as well. But yes, it is possible.
Looks like we answered their question. And then the next one, how about next month when we have a new data set? What is the best way to update?
So you have to, if you have a Power BI tenant in your organization, and you have to set up a gateway to that data source, and then you can set up refreshes or incremental refreshes within Power BI service. If you're keeping it in desktop, you just refresh the data here, the same way you would if you were in Excel.
Wonderful. And then with 1 minute left, I just wanted to thank Gavin for a fantastic presentation and for all of you attending today. Please do not hesitate to reach out to Gavin or I or LinkedIn. I dropped our contact information and additional resources in the chat. These links will also be shared with the video recording via email tomorrow. I also recorded the questions at the very end and we'll give out a typed response as well to those. And yeah, that's all for today. Thanks again to everyone who attended this webinar, and we hope to see you at our upcoming events.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, guys.